The orbital station creaked like a dying animal. Its exterior was half ripped open by past bombardments, exposed plating torn and charred, with structural beams dangling freely over open space. A dozen compartments had been sealed off long ago, either depressurized or too unstable to risk repairs. Inside, lights flickered unreliably, powered by jury-rigged solar units and dwindling fusion backups. It wasn't built to last this long. No one maintained it anymore, not officially. This place had become a graveyard. Zaylon knew it well. She'd been hiding here for weeks. She stepped out from shattered airlock into the outer corridor, boots long gone, her bare feet pressing carefully onto the cold metal. Each movement was slow, deliberate. Her breathing was controlled, but her pulse betrayed her, elevated, shaky. She walked past a collapsed security gate, down a rusted gantry that led to one of the viewing decks, now open to the vacuum, save for a weak force field crackling along the outer edge. She stood at the ledge. Below, a dying planet turned slowly on its axis, its atmosphere corrupted and bleeding color. The Zalari homeworld, once her people's center of culture and power, now an empty shell. Toxic storms raged across its surface, visible from orbit as red and violet clouds tore across ruined cities. There were no rescue fleets, no rebuilding missions. The war had ended, but no one came back for the broken. She ran a hand through her long white hair. It was matted, tangled, damp with condensation from the station's failing climate system. Her skin, pale blue with faint violet undertones, was slick with sweat and marked by bruises and old laser burns. She wore what remained of her Zalari ceremonial combat suit, a short, open-chested tunic reinforced with carbon mesh straps and high-slit armored skirts that once denoted elite rank. Now it was just clothing, ragged, insufficient, and humiliating. She stepped forward. Her toes met the edge. One shift of her weight, and it would be over. No pain, no orders, no more. For a brief second, she closed her eyes. I wouldn't do that. The voice came from behind her, male, calm, firm. Zayla didn't react immediately. Her mind shifted into defensive protocol, trained responses taking over. She turned slowly. One hand slid down toward the hilt of a dagger, clipped her thigh. A man stood 10 meters away, partially in shadow. Human, late 30s. He wore an old medical vest over charcoal gray tactical clothes, the kind used by independent relief units. He looked lean, wiry, hardened. His short brown hair was beginning to gray at the edges, and a few days stubble lined his jaw. I'm not armed, he said, raising his hand slightly. She said nothing. Her eyes stayed on him. Muscles ready. One mistake, and she'd strike. You don't have to do this, he said. At least not today. Her voice was steady. You shouldn't be here. I could say the same. Silence. I'm Nathan Hale, he continued. Terran Medical Corps, formerly. Now contract relief. I was redirected here after reports of a radiation leak. Guess that was a lie. She didn't answer. Her mind worked quickly. There had been no active distress signals from the station. No functioning comms. Someone must have tipped off the humans. That meant risk, exposure. Nathan took a step forward. Look, I know what this place is. I know why people come here. He pointed to the ledge with his chin. I've seen others do the same. Soldiers. Refugees. People with nothing left. Her brow tightened. You think you understand me? She asked. No, I don't. But you're still here. You're still breathing. That says something. Zayla didn't move. But she didn't step forward either. Nathan scanned her, not in a threatening way. Just reading the scene. Her posture. Her condition. She looked starved. Malnourished. Exhausted. But alert. Dangerous. I'm not going to try to change your mind, he said. But if you need food, shelter, even just heat, my ship's docked 2 levels down. I didn't ask for help. I didn't come here to give orders. Another long pause. Then, something in her expression shifted. Not surrender, but recognition. He wasn't a threat. Not yet. And she was cold. Her hands were numb. She didn't know how long her body would last, even if she didn't jump. She stepped back from the ledge. Nathan didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He just waited. She walked past him without a word, her body tense, her blade still drawn. He turned and followed her, not too close, not too far. They moved through a narrow service corridor. Walls were covered in soot and rust. Emergency lights flashed every few meters. Zayla kept her eyes forward. Nathan occasionally glanced over his shoulder, checking their path. He didn't speak again until they reached the docking clamps. His ship was small, a retrofitted medical transport, painted in faded white and olive green. A large red cross on the hull was half-scorched. Inside, the cabin was utilitarian. Supplies were stacked neatly along the walls. One cot, one heater, a small food dispenser. The space was clearly meant for function, not comfort. Zayla stepped in and surveyed the room quickly. No hidden compartments, no armed guards, just a man living alone. Nathan handed her a sealed ration pack. Not fresh, but edible. She took it without a word, sat down on a crate, peeled the packaging open. The smell hit her, synthetic broth and dense nutrient paste. It was bland, but it was warm. She ate slowly, forcing her stomach to adjust. He crouched near the wall, arms resting on his knees. "What's your name?" he asked. She didn't respond. "Not important," he said. "I get it. You've had enough of people knowing who you are." A flicker in her expression. That cut close. "You're not military," she said at last. "Not anymore. What are you doing here?" "I patch people up, move between dead zones, bring meds, water, talk to people no one else talks to." "And you came alone?" "Yeah, I work better that way." She nodded once, finished her meal. Her stomach ached, but in a good way. Her hands had stopped shaking. He stood and walked to a storage bin, pulled out a thermal blanket, and held it out. She hesitated, then took it, wrapped it around her shoulders slowly. "I'll stay awake," he said. "You can rest." "I'm not sleeping." "Didn't say you had to." Zayla leaned back against the wall. Her muscles ached. Her body wanted to relax, but her mind wouldn't let it. Still, her eyes started to drift, just slightly. "You said others came here," she whispered. "Did any of them stay?" Nathan looked over. "No, but none of them had someone with them when they walked back." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Zayla didn't remember falling asleep. When her eyes opened again, the room was dim and still. The software of the ship's filtration unit was the only sound. She sat up slowly, her muscles stiff beneath the thin blanket. Her blade was still in her grip. Her fingers hadn't let go all night. Nathan was sitting across from her, against the far wall. He hadn't moved. His eyes were open, tired but alert. He didn't look surprised she'd woken up. "You slept," he said simply. She looked away. "Not on purpose. That's how it starts." The cot creaked as she shifted her weight. Her back ached. The bruises on her ribs were deeper than she'd admitted. She glanced around again, taking in more detail this time. The walls were patched with emergency sealant, and a few medical crates had been used to improvise furniture. The ship was old but held together. A place designed for survival, not comfort. She dropped the blanket and stood. Her ceremonial uniform felt tighter now, clinging to her skin with every movement. She tugged at the torn strap near her collarbone, then crossed to the far end of the cabin. "Where's your crew?" she asked. "Gone," Nathan replied. "They pulled out 3 months ago. I stayed behind." "Why?" He paused. Didn't feel finished. Zayla studied him. His face was calm, but there were signs, shadows under the eyes, a slight stiffness when he moved, the way he kept his distance. He had seen too much and buried more than he admitted. She didn't press. Nathan stood slowly, stretching his back. "There's a wash station through the rear hatch. You can clean up if you want. There's fresh water, basic supplies." "I'll stay here." Zayla hesitated, then walked past him, careful to keep a meter of space between them. When she stepped into the washroom, she locked the hatch behind her. Inside, she stood in front of the mirror, stripped off her armor piece by piece, and saw herself clearly for the first time in weeks. Her body was lean but worn, skin marked by healing wounds and the muscle tremors of prolonged stress. Her face looked hollow, eyes duller than they used to be. The proud soldier she remembered was buried under fatigue and failure. She ran her hand across her abdomen, stopping at a raised scar just below her ribs. The last mission, the one that ended everything. She turned on the water, and for a few minutes, she didn't think at all. When she returned to the main cabin, wrapped in a fresh towel, her old armor was folded neatly on the bed. Beside it a set of human clothes, neutral tone cargo pants, a thermal top, and boots one size too big. She looked at Nathan. I figured the old outfit wasn't doing you any favors, he said. She raised a brow. You went through my things? No, just guess the size. She changed without comment. The clothes were loose but warm. She adjusted the waistband and tied it down with a belt from her gear. She still kept the blade. You always bring clothes for alien women who break into derelict stations, she asked flatly. Only the ones who don't kill me. Zayla allowed the corner of her mouth to twitch upward. Barely, but it was there. Nathan activated the heating coil on the small cooking unit and dropped in 2 sealed ration packets. Food's ready in 5. You want to talk about how you ended up out here? She sat across from him, arms crossed. You wouldn't believe me. Try me. She stared at the floor for a few seconds. Her fingers drummed lightly on her arm. I was part of the Zalari Vanguard, she said. 4th Division. We were ordered to destroy a civilian convoy. Unarmed. Neutral. Nathan didn't interrupt. I disobeyed. Disabled our weapons systems. Gave the convoy a head start. She looked up at him. My command called it treason. I was stripped of my insignia, shipped off to a penal unit. Eventually, I walked away from that too. Nathan met her gaze. Why didn't they kill you? They wanted me forgotten. Disgrace is louder than death in Zalari culture. He nodded slowly. Why the ledge? He asked. She answered without hesitation. Because I was tired of running. And because for a minute, I thought no one would notice if I disappeared. The heating unit clicked. Nathan stood, pulled the food packs, and handed one to her. She took it quietly and opened the seal. The smell was synthetic but edible. He spoke again, his tone softer now. You were wrong. Someone did notice. Zayla didn't respond, but she didn't argue either. As they ate, the atmosphere shifted. The air still felt heavy, but the silence between them no longer carried tension. It carried questions, unspoken ones. Nathan cleared his throat. I get routine transmissions from Terran HQ. News, movement reports, supply requests. The last one mentioned your name. Zayla's eyes snapped to his. You're flagged, he said. Both sides know you're alive, and no one's eager to see you reappear. Then why haven't you turned me in? He met her eyes. Because I don't work for them anymore. And because I think people deserve a second chance. She shook her head. That's a dangerous belief. He leaned forward. Yeah, but maybe it's the only one worth having out here. Outside, the station creaked again as metal shifted under thermal stress. Zayla stood and walked to the viewport. Below them, the planet turned, broken, scorched, beautiful in its desolation. She placed her hand against the glass. Nathan joined her, but didn't speak. For now, neither needed to. And for the first time in a long time, Zayla didn't feel like she was waiting to die. She felt like she was deciding what came next. Zayla sat at the ship's narrow dining console, absently tracing a faint scar on her forearm while the air recycler hummed overhead. Morning, if it could be called that in orbit, arrived with no light change, only the soft chime of the onboard chronometer. She hadn't spoken much since the night before. Nathan didn't press. He busied himself by checking his equipment, updating logs, and pretending not to glance at her every few minutes. Do you always work alone? She asked finally. Nathan looked up from his datapad. Mostly. By choice. After a while, yes. She leaned back. You don't strike me as someone who likes silence. He tilted his head. I like peace. There's a difference. The silence returned, but this time it didn't weigh heavily. Zayla had learned to measure people in minutes and glances. Nathan didn't avoid her gaze. He didn't shrink when she tested him with cold questions. He also didn't reach for her, didn't touch her unless she gave permission. That mattered more than she wanted to admit. Still, questions churned in her head. Some weren't easy to ask. One pushed forward anyway. Why did you really stay behind on this station? Nathan paused. My brother served in the Arat War. Infantry. He looked down, voice steady. His squad was hit during a failed evacuation on Kaler Prime. Communications blackout. Command pulled out before confirming who made it. I went back on my own. Found what was left of them. Zayla's eyes narrowed. You're a doctor, not a soldier. I was both. Field medic. He exhaled slowly. It's easier to help the dying than explain to the living why we didn't save them. She absorbed that in silence. How many people have you treated? She asked. Too many. Not enough. She nodded once. It was a soldier's answer. Honest. Brief. Nathan stepped toward the supply rack and pulled down a small crate. I have a med scanner. I noticed you're favoring your left side. Rib damage. Old fracture. Mostly healed. Let me check anyway. Internal bleeding doesn't care about pride. She hesitated, then stood and approached. He scanned her slowly with a handheld device, careful not to touch her unless absolutely necessary. She flinched once when a sensor passed over her lower ribs. Hairline fracture. 2 vertebrae misaligned. You've been moving through pain for weeks. I didn't have a choice. He locked eyes with her. You do now. That stopped her for a moment. The idea that survival didn't have to be a battle every second. It felt foreign. Nathan returned the scanner to the crate. I can adjust the cot and run thermal therapy. Won't fix everything, but it'll help. Zayla crossed her arms. What do you want in return? Nothing. Everyone wants something. He studied her expression. Maybe I just don't want to find your body hanging out the airlock in 2 days. That hit harder than she expected. She turned away and sat again. I don't know how to be anything else, she said, voice low. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back on that ship. Command screaming. Crew bleeding out. My hands shaking. I made a choice, and everything after that, it all collapsed. Nathan sat across from her, quiet. Have you ever made a decision that you thought was right, but it burned down everything you were? Yes, he said. She met his eyes. What happened? I kept going, but I didn't walk away whole. Zayla looked away again, but the tension in her shoulders softened. The cot wasn't far. She stood and walked to it, settled in, and let him set the thermal unit along her back. The heat spread slowly, penetrating tense muscles and worn tissue. For a few minutes, neither spoke. Eventually, she broke the silence. What happens now? If the Terrans know I'm alive, they'll try to find you. You're a political risk. If the Zalari Council learns you're cooperating with a human, he stopped. You're caught between 2 sides that both want you erased. She looked up at the ceiling. Then maybe I shouldn't have come off that ledge. Nathan stood. Or maybe you're exactly where you need to be. Later, as she lay resting under the warmth, Nathan checked the comms terminal. A new encrypted ping had come in. A low-priority scan beacon. Not Terran. Not Zalari. Unknown ID. He muted it and didn't mention it. He would watch it. But Zayla didn't need more reasons to run. Not yet. She was finally beginning to slow down. To trust. That mattered more than whatever signal was out there. And for now, that was enough. The thermal pad's low hum filled the room, almost like a steady breath. Zayla lay motionless on the cot, eyes open, mind running. Her body had begun to loosen under the heat, but her thoughts refused to settle. She wasn't used to stillness. Stillness meant reflection, and reflection meant memory. She glanced toward Nathan, who sat across the room reviewing something on his datapad. He hadn't said a word in nearly half an hour. No idle talk, no forced comfort. He gave her space without distance. That balance confused her. She sat up slowly, brushing strands of white hair from her face. Her body resisted the motion, soreness deep in her spine, the dull ache of old wounds. But it was tolerable. Less pain than she remembered feeling in weeks. You've been watching that signal, she said, breaking the silence. Nathan didn't pretend to be surprised. Yeah, you're not going to ask what it is? I already know it's not from Earth Command or the Zalari government. Otherwise, it would have come with threats. She nodded, thoughtful. Mercenaries, maybe. Smugglers. Or black market scouts tracking my identity chip, she added. Nathan locked his screen and set the pad aside. Your chip was still active? She looked down, jaw tightening. I thought I disabled it during the escape. Maybe I was wrong. He stood and walked over to one of the sealed medical crates. From it, he pulled out a slim, black tool set and a dermal scanner. Then we remove it properly. Zayla hesitated. You know how? Every Terran relief medic has to. Too many refugees come intact. She peeled off the top of her thermal shirt, revealing the upper part of her shoulder blade. A faint ridge sat just beneath the skin, no larger than a fingernail, but enough to broadcast her location in short bursts. Nathan approached carefully. This'll sting, he said. I've had worse. He sterilized the area, made a clean incision, and removed the chip with practiced efficiency. She didn't flinch once. He sealed the wound with a cauterizing patch and dropped the chip into a containment vial. It's offline now. I'll dump it during our next orbit drop, he said. She adjusted her shirt and sat back down. So now I'm a ghost. Better that than a target, he replied. Zayla studied him for a moment. You've done this before, haven't you? Helped people disappear. Sometimes disappearing is the only way they survive. She leaned forward. What did it cost you? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked to the small galley, poured water into a heating coil, and activated the brew. After a pause, he said, I lost my medical license, my name, and the people I used to work with. She raised a brow. You threw it all away for strangers? Nathan shrugged. It wasn't about them. It was about sleeping at night. Steam curled from the mug as he handed it to her. She took it, letting the warmth settle into her fingers. You don't ask for anything in return, she said quietly. But you don't run from this either. Why? He gave her a hard look. Because someone should have been there for my brother. Someone should have ignored protocol and done the right thing. I couldn't change that, but I can change what happens next. The honesty in his tone hit her like pressure against old wounds. She didn't respond. She didn't know how. Later that cycle, Zayla moved to the open maintenance panel and began inspecting the ship systems. She pulled up schematics, rerouted minor power feeds, and cleaned filters clogged with weeks of dust. Nathan watched from the other side of the room. I didn't know Zalari commandos had engineering training, he said. They don't, she replied. But I wasn't just a soldier. What were you? Her hands paused briefly. A planner. A systems strategist. They used me to patch battle AI, sabotage enemy comms, and repair what command broke. Nathan folded his arms. Why didn't they just promote you? I didn't have the right bloodline. She turned, wiping her hands. Zalari Dominion is still feudal beneath the technology. If you're born low, you die low, unless you change your own fate. That's what you were doing when you disobeyed orders? No, that was me doing what was right. Changing fate came later, when I ran. The tension in the room thickened. There was more to her story. Nathan didn't push, but she saw the question in his eyes. I had someone, she said suddenly, a squad mate. She was more than that. We made plans to leave the service, to disappear together. Nathan waited. She reported me. Thought she was protecting me by turning me in. Thought they'd show mercy. He didn't interrupt. They didn't. Zayla turned away, voice low. She died in the penal compound. They made me watch. Called it re-education. Nathan stepped forward, his voice steady. You didn't deserve that. I know. She looked up. But that doesn't make it go away. Silence settled between them again. But it wasn't empty. It was heavy with understanding. They worked side by side for the rest of the cycle. He ran maintenance logs. She recalibrated the ship's life support systems. Two people in motion, not talking, not needing to. That night, as they prepared for rest, Nathan set up a proximity alarm linked to the external sensors. You expecting trouble? She asked. I'm expecting peace to run out. She nodded. I won't run this time. He looked at her. I'm not asking you to stay. But if you do, we fight as two. Not one. She stared at him for a long moment. And then she said what neither had voiced yet. I'm not ready to be alone again. Nathan nodded once. You won't be. She lay down, pulling the blanket over her body, her hand still resting near the hilt of her blade. Old habits wouldn't vanish overnight. But for the first time since she boarded his ship, she didn't feel like she needed it. And somewhere beyond the station, in the cold silence of space, an unknown signal pinged again. But neither of them moved. Not yet. A low chime pulsed through the ship, followed by the faint hum of thruster stabilization. Nathan stood near the terminal, eyes locked on the screen. The signal had returned, sharper this time. Not a scan. A coded transmission. 5 pulses, spaced with precision. A pattern. Deliberate. He decrypted the first sequence. Partial Zalari encryption. Outdated. Sloppy. Not official military code, but close. Someone was trying to look like the Dominion without actually being them. Zayla stepped in, drying her hair with a towel. She wore the thermal shirt he'd given her, tucked loosely into the cargo pants. Her demeanor was calm, But Nathan noticed the tension in her eyes the moment she saw the terminal. "It's back," he said. She walked over, scanning the waveform. "It's not an alert beacon. It's a tracking handshake. Someone's close. Friend of yours?" She gave a quiet, bitter laugh. If they were a friend, they wouldn't be broadcasting on this frequency. He leaned in. "Can they pinpoint us?" "If we respond, yes. If we stay silent," she paused, "they'll still find us. Eventually." Nathan shut the terminal. "Then we prepare." Zayla moved fast. She collected what remained of her armor, pulled out her sidearm, and began checking ammunition. Nathan opened a hidden panel beneath the cot, revealing an emergency supply cache. A compact rifle, a shock pull sidearm, and 2 respirator masks. "You really are ready for anything," she said. "After your 3rd evacuation in hostile space, you start packing smart." They spent the next hour reinforcing the outer hull. Zayla rerouted auxiliary power to shield the module's thermal signature. Nathan sealed the main hatch and ran a short diagnostic on life support. It was quiet, efficient work. Both of them had done this before, in different wars on different sides. "What's your plan if they breach?" Zayla asked, tightening her belt. "We don't let it get that far." She turned to him. "We need to talk about what happens if they recognize me." He looked at her directly. "I don't care who they think you are. You're not going back. I'm not asking you to protect me. I'm not asking for permission." The moment stretched. Her jaw set, but she didn't argue. "I don't want you to die for me, Nathan." "I won't," he said, "but I won't let you die for them either." Later, as they waited in silence, the signal vanished. No ship appeared. No docking attempt. Just silence. Nathan checked the radar again. Still nothing. Zayla paced. "They're not going to land until they're sure we're isolated. Whoever they are, they know I'll fight." "Then we make it look like we left," Nathan said. He activated a decoy launch protocol, a maintenance pod programmed to jettison toward a nearby moon. It carried no people, no heat signature, only a traceable tag they attached at the last second. The ship launched with a soft rumble, streaking into the black. Within moments, the signal pulsed again, redirected. "They bought it," she said. "For now," Nathan added. They both exhaled for the first time in hours. Night cycle came. Zayla sat cross-legged on the cot, armor off, skin bare from the waist up except for medical tape across her shoulder. Nathan moved carefully, applying a dermal patch across the lingering bruise. She didn't flinch. She just watched him. "You treat everyone like this?" she asked. "Only the ones who threaten to kill me and steal my food." Her expression softened. She reached up and gently touched his hand. "I lied earlier," she said, "about the ledge. It wasn't just exhaustion. I thought, maybe if I disappeared, the guilt would go with me." Nathan didn't answer immediately. "It won't," he said, "but it gets quieter if you don't carry it alone." They looked at each other in silence. Her fingers slid along the edge of his jaw. He didn't stop her. She leaned forward. The kiss was slow, not desperate, just honest. Her breath was warm. His hand moved up to her back, not to pull her in, but to hold her still. They broke apart after a few seconds, neither embarrassed. "Still think I should have stayed on the ledge?" she asked, voice low. He shook his head. "I'm glad you didn't." That night, she slept against his chest. For once, the alarm stayed quiet. And for the first time in years, neither of them dreamed of war. The next morning began with silence, but it wasn't the cold, empty kind that usually haunted Zayla. This silence was steady, intentional. It came with the low, constant hum of the ship's systems and the warmth of another human presence nearby. She woke with her face resting against Nathan's bare shoulder, her body tangled loosely with his beneath a shared thermal blanket. She didn't move right away. For the first time in weeks, her body wasn't screaming at her to fight or run. The pain in her ribs had dulled. Her breathing felt steady. Her thoughts were clearer than they had any right to be. Nathan stirred but didn't speak. He simply opened his eyes, made brief contact with hers, and nodded once. No awkwardness, no expectation, just mutual understanding. She sat up slowly, stretched, and pulled on her shirt in the dim light. Nathan rose and moved to the galley unit to prepare hot water. Neither of them broke the silence until the smell of rehydrated protein and stale scent coffee filled the air. "Any sign of the ship from last night?" she asked. He tapped the terminal. No, the decoy's still transmitting. Either they followed it, or they're watching us from a distance. Both are bad. Nathan handed her a mug. True, but time's in our favor. The longer they wait, the more likely they'll make a mistake. Zayla took a slow sip. You sure about that? No, he admitted, but we can't afford paranoia. It'll break us faster than they can. She leaned against the console, watching the screen. I need to start thinking long-term. You mean leaving? I mean living. Nathan didn't interrupt. I can't stay here. Not forever, she said. This station's a tomb. It's a matter of time before one of the scavenger crews shows up or a Zalari agent drops in looking for a promotion. You're not wrong, but we don't have a jump ship. She turned. Can we build one? Nathan shook his head. Not from this module. But he hesitated, then turned the display to show a nearby wreck. There's a service vessel on the far end of the orbital graveyard. Zalari design. Short-range courier class. If its core is intact, and we can patch its systems into my NAV protocols, we might get one FTL burst out of it. Zayla looked at the image. That ship's on the edge of the debris field. I know. No cover. No working gravity field. And the outer holes probably crawling with magnetic residue from the war. Still better odds than waiting for whoever pinged us last night to come back. She studied him carefully. This is suicide for most people. Well, not most people, he said. They spent the next hour loading emergency gear, oxygen canisters, magnetic boots, insulated suits, compact weapons. Zayla worked with silent precision, locking cables, checking pressure valves, adjusting the charge settings on a repulsor drill. She moved like she was preparing for war, but her face stayed calm. Nathan watched her. You've done salvage before. Plenty. I've just never had anyone to bring it back to. They suited up and exited through the airlock. The walk across the ruined station was slow, methodical. Fragments of hull plating drifted by like frozen corpses in orbit. Below them, the planet's burned atmosphere glowed like a dying ember. Zayla kept her hand near her sidearm. Nathan scanned ahead with a motion detector. At the edge of the debris field, the wreck loomed into view, a wedge-shaped courier vessel, scorched down the starboard side. Its outer hull was intact, though a large chunk of its dorsal plating had been peeled back by explosive decompression. They latched onto the hull with magnetic clamps. Zayla went first, sliding through a side maintenance hatch. Her helmet light swept across a corridor thick with frozen vapor and floating debris. The inside of the ship looked like it had been abandoned mid-evacuation. Bodies weren't present, probably ejected, but blood spray had dried in streaks across the walls. I'll check the core room, she said. You take the bridge. Nathan nodded, then moved toward the command center. His boots clanked quietly along the metal deck. Each screen he passed was dead, flickering from residual power. But the pilot's console was intact. Bridge secured, he said into the comm. Zayla's voice returned. Core is stable. Minimal damage. Looks like they shut it down before the breach. Nathan began rerouting diagnostic power from his suit to the ship's NAV panel. Lights flickered. Controls came to life. Zayla appeared a minute later, her visor up, sweat on her brow. This thing will fly. With work, he confirmed. But we only get one shot. She stepped beside him and leaned over the console. Where would we go? He looked at her. They're the mining colony 3 systems out. Neutral. Quiet. Lots of places to disappear. Disappear or start over? She asked. That's up to you. They stood there for a while. Just 2 people floating in the ruins of their pasts, making choices in silence. And without speaking, they made one together. They were going to leave. Not to run. To live. They got back to the ship and began preparing for integration. As they stripped the systems for transfer, the comms terminal pinged again. But this time, it wasn't a signal. It was a voice. Female. Sharp. Precise. Zalari dialect, but laced with distortion. Zayla Turan. You are not forgotten. Return to judgment, where your protector will be tried in your place. Nathan stepped beside her as the message ended. Her jaw tightened. They found us, she said. He didn't look afraid. Then let them try. They disconnected the comm line without speaking. Nathan reached over and locked down the receiver, muting any return pings. The last message still echoed in Zaylah's head, clear as if the voice were in the room with her. Not forgotten. Return to judgment, where your protector will be tried in your place. It was the kind of language used by tribunal enforcers, Zalari elites who operated outside formal law. Not soldiers, not politicians, but executioners with orders written in silence. Zaylah turned slowly from the terminal, her breathing controlled but shallow. They sent a black writ. Nathan narrowed his eyes. Explain. They don't arrest, Nathan. They remove. Quietly. Publicly, if necessary. She looked straight at him. That transmission was formal notice. I'm marked. And you just became leverage. Nathan didn't flinch. Then we stick to the plan. Get the courier ship running and jump before they reach the station. We don't know how many there are. Or how close. That doesn't change anything. We don't wait for them to knock. They spent the next 4 hours in coordinated silence. Zaylah worked from the courier vessel, rerouting coolant lines and reinitializing the fusion chamber. Nathan installed an encrypted NAV system ported from his own ship. He patched together a basic life support feed using scavenged oxygen filters and manually reprogrammed the FTL limiter to allow one long-range burn. The work was risky, makeshift, but possible. By cycle's end, the courier ship was breathing. Not fully, not confidently, but it responded. When Nathan re-entered the main ship to collect their essentials, Zaylah stood near the viewport, fully suited. She wore a lightweight version of her old armor, refitted to allow faster movement, cleaner function. Her eyes were sharp again, focused, not empty like the day he'd found her. I want to ask you something, she said. He stopped, bag in hand. Go ahead. If we make it, if we get off this station alive, what do you want? Now where we go. What do you want? He set the bag down, took a breath. I want quiet mornings. Real ones. I want to sit with a cup of coffee and not check proximity scanners every 5 minutes. I want to fix things that aren't broken just because I like how they work. He paused. And I want to hear your voice without wondering how much longer I'll get to. She looked at him without blinking, then nodded once. Good. They finished packing and moved toward the docked courier vessel. Nathan paused by the airlock. Once we undock, the station's AI will detect the power loss. It'll broadcast. Won't matter, Zaylah said. They already know we're leaving. He pulled the lever. The module detached with a shudder. Thrusters fired. They slid out of orbit, guided only by a weak, manually calibrated trajectory system. The stars shifted ahead, slow and quiet. The ship's interior lit up as backup power surged. It was dim, cold, and stripped bare, but it moved. Zaylah slid into the pilot's chair. Nathan took co-pilot. The console flickered to life. She adjusted the inertial dampeners. He confirmed radiation shielding. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. 10 minutes out, the long-range scanner flashed red. 3 heat signatures. Sleek, narrow craft. Zalari Predator-class interceptors. They found us, she said. How long? 7 minutes. Maybe less. Nathan didn't hesitate. Then we light the drive now. Zaylah reached across the console. Her hand trembled only once. She locked the coordinates into the FDL nav. One shot. No backup. No second chance. Drive will destabilize the hull, she said. It'll hold, Nathan replied. She looked over. He was calm, not because he was fearless, because he'd already made peace with what mattered. She nodded, engaging. The ship lurched. Gravity shifted. The stars around them warped, stretched. The cabin moaned under pressure. A line of static surged through the consoles. Behind them, the interceptors accelerated too late. The courier vessel snapped into FTL, vanishing from sight. No pursuit, no weapons fired. No time for either. When the ship stabilized, silence returned. The stars outside had changed. No more red planet. No wreckage. No station. Just deep space. Distant suns. A NAV system blinking green. They made it. Zaylah exhaled slowly, her grip loosening on the throttle. Nathan reached over and shut down emergency systems. The cabin dimmed. We're out, he said. She looked at him, and then, for the first time, she smiled. Not because she had won, but because she was finally free. Zayla stood quietly in the middle of the courier vessel's cabin. The hum of the FTL drive had faded, replaced by a low ambient tone as the ship settled into sublight cruising speed. The air inside was cold but breathable. A few systems flickered on and off as power rerouted from the exhausted core. Lights blinked inconsistently across the ceiling. She didn't mind. The silence was unfamiliar, but it no longer felt threatening. Nathan worked at the console behind her, recalibrating the ship's life support cycle. He moved with focus, but not urgency. For the first time since they met, there was no trace of tension in his voice, no suspicion in his posture. Just quiet momentum. They were safe for now, but more than that, they were unchained. Zayla turned slowly, eyes sweeping across the cramped, Spartan interior. It wasn't much. No comforts, no space to stretch, no amenities. But it had everything they needed. A place to breathe. A place that moved forward, not backward. Her mind struggled to process the feeling. Freedom. It didn't feel like a sudden burst of joy. It felt steady, like calm water after years of storms. She walked to the side panel, took a seat on a storage crate, and pulled a folded datasheet from her belt, one she'd taken from Nathan's original ship before they left. A small list was scrawled in his handwriting. Planetary codes, fuel depot coordinates, refugee outposts, the kind of places you only found if you knew where to look. New Edessa, she said aloud. Nathan looked up. Far out, barely charted. It's not Dominion-controlled? No. Human outpost. Joint civilian settlement. Old mining operation turned frontier colony. They don't ask questions if you bring trade or labor skills. Zayla nodded. I can work. Tech systems, security detail, atmospheric diagnostics. Whatever they need. He raised an eyebrow. You're not worried about being recognized? She shook her head. The face they're looking for wears Dominion armor and speaks with command protocol. She glanced down at her new outfit. Simple, unmarked. That woman's gone. Nathan leaned against the console, arms crossed. So what's your plan? She thought for a moment. Get a name that doesn't come with a death warrant. Build a new record. Day by day. No more missions. No more battle orders. Her voice steadied. And no more ledges. He crossed the cabin and sat beside her, their shoulders almost touching. He spoke quietly. Do you want to disappear, Zayla, or do you want to live? She looked at him, serious. I want to live. I just need to remember how. They didn't speak for a while. The hum of distant stars and the occasional clunk of thermal expansion filled the silence. Nathan stood and moved to the emergency locker. He pulled out 2 ration packs, handed her one, and sat on the floor beside her. They ate in silence. She didn't flinch at the taste this time. It wasn't pleasant, but it was real. Afterward, she sat with her legs folded, blade resting beside her, not as a defense, but out of habit. There's something I need to say, Nathan said, his voice measured. She turned slightly. When I first saw you on that platform, I didn't know what to expect. I just knew someone was about to step off the edge. He exhaled, and I wasn't ready to watch that happen again. Her expression didn't change, but her posture softened. I thought helping you would be a way to make peace with my past, he continued. But that's not what happened. You didn't need saving. You needed space to choose something else. Zayla looked down at her hands. I almost didn't. But you did, he said. A long beat passed. Then she looked at him fully, eyes steady. Do you regret it? No, he shook his head once. I don't. She reached out slowly, fingers brushing against his. He responded in kind, linking his hand with hers. Not as a gesture of comfort, but connection. Equal. Chosen. They stayed like that until the cabin lights dimmed on the automated cycle. Later, as she prepared for rest, Zayla stood near the viewport. Stars moved slowly outside, streaks of light trailing behind distant engine traces. No alarms. No pursuit. No echoes of command voices barking in her head. She touched the glass. I didn't believe it could happen, she said. Nathan stepped beside her. What? Surviving without losing what made me who I was. He replied softly. You didn't lose anything. You just stopped giving it to people who didn't earn it. She turned to him. You did. He didn't answer. He just placed his hand over hers on the glass. The next day, they arrived at the edge of the new Edessa system. A dusty brown world with silver clouds and scattered domes of light on the surface. Habitation hubs protected from the harsh environment. The courier vessel's systems sputtered under stress, but they held. The ship entered the atmosphere with only minor turbulence. They touched down outside the outer colony walls, where the wind howled across empty terrain and the sky looked like dry smoke. A welcoming drone approached. Simple protocol checks. No ID scans. No questions asked. Zayla stepped onto the soil first. Her boots crunched softly over hardened dust. Nathan followed, his steps confident. As the settlement gates opened and the colony lights came into view, she paused. Nathan stood beside her. She looked toward the horizon, then at him. "Home?" he asked. She nodded. "Not yet." Then she added, "But maybe. Soon." They walked forward side by side. No one followed. No one hunted. No one gave orders. And for the first time in either of their lives, the future wasn't something to survive. It was something to build.